The Silver Courts of Elvarin Part 1. In the early hush before dawn, when the sky still carried the last fragile threads of starlight, Elvarin shimmered as if the whole realm held its breath. High above the emerald valleys and sapphire rivers, the silver courts floated like quiet constellations brought down to earth, grand citadels woven of moonlit marble, suspended upon ancient magic that hummed like a distant choir. For centuries, the courts had been silent. Their gates closed, their lights dimmed, their song withdrawn from the world of mortals. But those who kept the old ways whispered that silence never lasted forever. It only prepared the stage. And on the morning Arlen Frostweaver first felt the tremor ripple through the ground beneath his feet, he sensed the beginning of something long foretold, yet never understood. He had grown up in Brindhar Hollow, a village tucked between gentle hills and silverleaf forests, a place where tradition stood as firm as the ancient oaks. The villagers believed every story mattered, every myth held a lesson, and every choice echoed far beyond its moment. Arlen, though quiet and thoughtful, always carried a spark inside him, as if he were listening for a melody no one else could hear. That morning, while tending the old shrine lanterns, he felt the tremor again, soft, rhythmic, almost like a pulse. The lantern flames flickered, not from wind, but from something deeper, older. The air tightened around him. Then a gleam touched the horizon, a glint of silver coiling like a ribbon across the sky. The warmth along Arlen's spine wasn't fear, it was recognition, though he couldn't have said why. He turned toward the silver glow, heart thrumming in time with the shimmering line overhead. As the light grew brighter, a presence stirred, something patient yet urgent, waiting for his first step. Legends said the courts awakened only when the balance of the realm tilted beyond what the ordinary eye could see. Those chosen to walk their halls were marked not by lineage or training, but by a calling older than memory. Arlen steadied his breath. The lantern flame steadied with him. The tremor faded. The forests exhaled. But the silver ribbon in the sky did not fade. It stretched across the heavens toward the north, pointing like an arrow. He knew he couldn't ignore it. Not when the shrine behind him suddenly glowed faintly, illuminating carvings long dulled by time, carvings of figures standing before the silver courts, their faces lifted toward a radiant gate. For the first time in his life, the carvings seemed almost alive. Arlen stepped back from the shrine, his pulse echoing in his ears. He felt the old stories pressing close, wrapping around him like a cloak. And then a whisper, soft as mist, "Seek what awakens." He didn't know whether the whisper came from within or from the ancient stone, but its meaning struck him with undeniable clarity. Beyond the village, the silverleaf forest waited, its winding paths and luminous bark casting gentle light even through the thick morning air. Arlen walked its trails daily, but today the forest felt different, as though each leaf listened closely to the sound of his steps. Sunlight began to filter through the leaves, catching the silver thread above that still marked the sky. Birds hushed as he passed. Even the breeze slowed, almost reverent. As he approached the forest's heart, a soft glow emanated from a clearing he'd never noticed before, not in all his years wandering these woods. The glow rose from a ring of stones half covered in moss, yet radiating a quiet, steady light. At the center of the ring floated a crystalline shard, suspended in the air as if by its own will. Its surface held reflections of places Arlen had never seen: arches of silver, towers of pearl light, corridors that curved like constellations. Something in the shard called to him, not loudly, not forcefully, but with familiar warmth, like a memory he had misplaced and was only now recovering. He reached out. The moment his fingers brushed the shard, the world shifted, not violently, but decisively. The clearing dissolved into shimmering mist, the air filled with soft hums that resonated through his bones. Light spiraled around him, forming pathways of silver that intertwined like roots of an ancient tree. When the mist parted, Arlen stood, not in the forest anymore, but on a vast bridge crafted of glowing stone, suspended in a sky of deep indigo. Below him stretched endless swirling lights, constellations drifting like river currents. Ahead of him loomed gates taller than any mountain, shaped from interlocking crescents of silver, each etched with runes that shimmered like stars being born. The Silver Courts, awake, breathing, and waiting for him. Arlen stepped forward, each footstep ringing lightly, echoing against the canyon of sky. His breath caught when the gates responded not with noise, but with movement as fluid as thought. They parted in a single graceful sweep, revealing a grand hall that stretched beyond the horizon, its columns carved from the glow of moonstone, its floors reflecting constellations that shifted beneath his feet. The air carried a melody, subtle yet unmistakable, a tune that tugged at something deep within him, something that had waited for this moment for longer than he had lived. As he crossed the threshold, a soft ripple spread through the hall. Lights burst from the floor in delicate arcs, weaving into a form of figure robed in silver threads that fluttered like wings. The figure's face was serene, its eyes luminous pools of starlight. "Welcome, Arlen Frostweaver," the figure said, its voice gentle but carrying the weight of centuries. "Long have the courts watched the shifting balance, and long have they waited for one who hears what others ignore." Arlen swallowed. "Why me?" The figure tilted its head slightly, as though listening to something only it could hear. "Because you saw the sign. Because you stepped toward it. Because the realm leans toward a storm hidden from ordinary eyes, and tradition alone cannot shield it." The melody in the air deepened, becoming more textured, threading itself around Arlen like an embrace. He felt warmth in his chest, a shimmer of silver right where his heartbeat lived. "There are paths ahead," the figure continued. "Paths that require a spirit steady enough to bear what others cannot sense. The courts will guide you, if you choose to walk their halls." Arlen looked past the figure into the endless chambers beyond. Every instinct urged him forward, not blindly, but with purposeful steadiness, the kind his elders taught. Hold your ground, honor the old ways, trust what stands before you. He nodded once. "I choose to walk." The figure's expression brightened, as though a dawn rose within its eyes. "Then the first court awaits." The hall shifted gently, the floor moving like a river beneath him. Pillars glided apart, revealing a chamber shaped like a vast sphere of woven silver vines. At its center hovered a crystalline orb, radiating faint ripples that brushed the air. As Arlen entered, the vines responded, lighting softly, each pulse whispering a welcome. The figure appeared beside him without moving, as if the chamber birthed it anew. "This is the court of echoing paths," it said. "Here, the past and the possible intertwine. To continue, you must face the truth you carry, even if you do not yet understand it." The orb brightened. Images swirled across its surface: Brindhar Hollow, the shrine lanterns, the silverleaf forest. Then faces, villagers he'd known his whole life, smiling, working, singing. But the images flickered, shifting into scenes that rippled with uncertainty: villagers standing beneath dim skies, lanterns extinguished, the forest silent, the shrine stone cracked. Arlen's chest tightened. The figure spoke softly. "The realm is not yet shadowed, but the threads lean toward imbalance. You must learn why the courts have awakened now, and how your path entwines with theirs." Arlen stepped closer to the orb, and as he did, it responded, sending out gentle waves that brushed against his thoughts. Memories rose unbidden. The first time he wandered alone into the forest. His grandmother's tales of the courts. Nights spent tracing constellations and sensing something just beyond perception. Tradition had always been his anchor, yet beneath it there had been a quiet pull toward something larger. The orb pulsed. A vision flared. He saw a vast plain beneath storm-torn skies, silver towers gleaming faintly in the distance. A figure stood alone on the plain, wrapped in a cloak of shifting light. The figure turned, and though Arlen could not see the face clearly, he felt the jolt of recognition, as if he were looking at someone bound to him by fate. The vision faded. The orb dimmed. Arlen exhaled slowly. Who was that? The figure beside him did not answer immediately. Its voice, when it came, was gentle but layered with meaning. A thread yet to be woven. A presence tied to your path, though neither of you has met. The realm leans toward a turning point, and you stand near its heart. Arlen felt the weight of the moment, not heavy, but significant, like the pause before a vow. The orb pulsed again, softer now, a heartbeat settling. "This is only the first step," the figure said. "Each court will reveal what must be understood. And as you move forward, the realm will shift with you. Arlen nodded, the tension in him giving way to resolve. Tradition had taught him to hold steady, to honor what came before, but now, he felt something new rising within him, the courage to step into what waited ahead. The vines in the chamber glittered as if acknowledging the choice. The air brightened. Paths of silver light unfurled beneath his feet, leading deeper into the courts. The figure began to fade into mist, its form dissolving like moonlight touched by dawn. The silver paths beneath Arlen's feet glowed with a soft, steady rhythm, guiding him deeper into the grand labyrinth of the courts. The air carried a low hum, gentle, constant like distant chimes swaying in an unseen breeze. With each step, he felt the quiet pull of the place, as though the halls themselves observed him, noted him, and weighed him against the shape of what was to come. Ahead, the corridor opened into a vast atrium shaped like a blooming star. Columns spiraled upward and unfurled into gleaming petals, their surfaces reflecting shifting constellations. The floor was a mirror of silver-lit crystal, but when Arlen looked down, he did not see his reflection. Instead, he saw streams of light moving beneath the surface, currents of possibility flowing like river water through stone. A voice rose gently beside him, though no figure stood in sight. "The courts adjust themselves to each traveler," it murmured. "They show what must be seen." The air to his right thickened, then parted like mist. A new figure emerged, robed in layers of luminous fabric that drifted like drifting tides. This one's features differed from the guide in the first hall. Sharper, more defined, eyes like polished quartz, not starlight. "I am Sarathan," the figure said, bowing its head with deliberate grace. "Guardian of the second court, the court of resonant threads." Arlen steadied his breath. "What does this court reveal?" Sarathan lifted a hand. The chamber dimmed, and the streams flowing beneath the crystal floor brightened, rising toward the surface like awakening fireflies. "It reveals how your past connects to the realm's future," Sarathan replied, "and whether your steps align with the harmony the world seeks." Before Arlen could ask what that meant, the streams of light spiraled upward, forming an intricate lattice around him. Threads shimmered in shifting hues: gold, azure, ember red, frost white. They wove themselves into patterns, some delicate, some bold, all intertwined like the roots of an ancient tree. Sarathan gestured toward a thread glowing faintly silver. "Follow it." Arlen reached out. The thread warmed beneath his fingers, and the moment he touched it, the chamber dissolved. He stood again in the silverleaf forest, but not the forest as he knew it. This one shimmered with vibrant clarity, each leaf alive with light. A younger version of himself, no more than 9, walked along a sun-dappled path, humming softly. His grandmother, Alira Frostweaver, walked beside him, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. Arlen felt his breath catch. He hadn't seen her in years. She pointed to a patch of silverleaf blossoms, each petal glowing faintly. "Listen closely, Arlen," she said with that familiar gentleness. "Places carry memory. The world remembers everything. And sometimes, if the time is right, it whispers back." The younger Arlen leaned forward, touching a blossom. It brightened at his touch. Sarathan's voice echoed softly around the vision. "Your gift was present long before the court stirred." Young Arlen looked toward the sky, where faint silver sparks danced, echoes of the courts far above. "Do you think I'll ever see the court's grandmother?" Alira smiled, a mystery in her eyes. "If they ever call you, it will not be because you seek them. It will be because you are needed." The vision dissolved like morning mist. Arlen stood again in the star-shaped atrium, the lattice of threads weaving anew around him. His heart ached with the memory, not painfully, but with the kind of yearning that reminded him how deeply the past anchored him. Sarathan stepped closer. "You were seen long before you understood it." Arlen swallowed. "But why? I'm no different from anyone else in Brindhar Hollow." Sarathan extended a hand toward another glowing thread, this one a warm amber. "Touch this, and decide again if you are no different." Arlen obeyed. A new vision flared to life. He stood at the edge of Brindhar's old festival ground, the night sky streaked with lantern trails. He remembered this evening, one of his earliest memories of standing apart from the crowd. While others danced and sang, He had wandered toward the old stone arch that bordered the silverleaf forest. But in the vision, he now saw what he hadn't seen then: silver motes drifting around him, swirling gently as if drawn to his presence. They drifted toward his chest, glowing each time his heart beat. A faint melody whispered through the air, delicate and clear. The same melody he had heard in the first court. The scene paused. Sarathan's voice wrapped around him. You have always resonated with the courts. Even before your path was woven, even before the realm began to shift. Arlen touched one of the drifting motes. It burst softly into shimmering dust. I didn't know, he murmured. I never felt special. Many do not recognize the threads they carry, Sarathan replied, until the moment they must. The vision faded. Arlen stood again in the atrium. The threads pulsed around him, brighter now, as if awakened by his touch. But one thread, deep blue, almost indigo, remained dim. Sarathan's expression shifted, becoming unreadable. The final thread remains unseen. You must decide whether you are ready. Arlen felt the stillness of the chamber settle around him. He stepped toward the dim thread. I'm ready. Sarathan lifted a hand sharply. Wait. The air tightened. The final thread reveals not what was, nor what is taking shape now, but what approaches. Once you witness it, you cannot step backward. Arlen's pulse quickened. Then forward is the only path. Sarathan studied him for a long moment, as though weighing the truth of his resolve. Then, with slow, solemn grace, the guardian extended its hand toward the dim thread. The thread brightened just enough for Arlen to touch it. The moment he did, the entire atrium vanished. He stood on a vast plateau beneath the turbulent sky. Silver clouds swirled overhead, churning as if something pressed from beneath them. The air thrummed with a faint rhythm, steady, deliberate like a heartbeat beneath stone. Before him rose a figure, the same figure from the vision in the first court, cloaked in shifting light, face indistinct, presence undeniable. But now, the figure stood closer, only a few paces away, and Arlen felt a jolt of recognition stronger than before. A recognition that didn't come from memory, but something deeper, woven into the marrow of his path. The figure raised its head. Though its face remained obscured, its voice carried like distant thunder softened by layers of silk. You walked the courts earlier than expected. Arlen steadied his breath. Who are you? The figure tilted its head. A traveler of the threads. A seeker of harmony. But my name is not yet meant for you. Arlen stepped forward. Then why do I see you? Why am I connected to you at all? The figure lifted a hand. The sky roiled in response. Because the realm leans toward a shift neither of us can ignore. And when the moment arrives, our paths will converge not by chance, but by necessity. Arlen felt the air thicken. Energy hummed beneath his skin, as though the thread he touched pulsed inside him. Now, what shift? He asked. What is coming? The figure said nothing. Instead, it raised its other hand and drew a shape in the air, an arc, then another, forming a sigil of interlocking crescents. The sigil glowed fiercely for a heartbeat, then dissolved into drifting sparks. When the sky carries this mark, the figure murmured, the courts will face their greatest trial, and you will stand where few have ever stood. Arlen's breath faltered. Why me? At last, the figure stepped closer. For the first time, its face sharpened slightly, still obscured, but with hints of silver eyes beneath the shifting light. Because the realm listens to you. Before Arlen could respond, the plateau shattered like glass. He gasped, and the atrium reformed around him. Sarathan stood where it had been before. Its expression tightened with caution. You saw more than expected, Sarathan whispered. And earlier than the courts intended. Arlen steadied himself, the echo of the vision still rippling through him. Who was that? Sarathan shook its head slowly. A presence long tied to the shifting of the realms. One whose path touches your own in ways we have yet to understand. The threads around them dimmed, then withdrew into the crystal floor. The second court has revealed what it can, Sarathan said. You are ready for the third. Arlen exhaled, tension trailing from his shoulders like mist. What waits in the next court? Sarathan's quartz eyes glimmered. Truths for older than prophecy, and choices that will shape the path your heart follows. A new silver path unfurled ahead, brighter, sharper, as though it carried a sense of expectation. Arlen stepped toward it, feeling the weight of the vision settle inside him like a chord waiting to be resolved, and as he walked, the air shifted once more, quiet, watchful, bracing for what the next court would unveil. The silver path ahead shimmered with a brighter, keener glow than the ones before it, almost like a blade drawn from its sheath. Arlen paused for a heartbeat, sensing the shift in the air. The stillness around him was not empty. It listened, it waited, it poised itself like a bowstring pulled taut. And the deeper he stepped into that waiting hush, the more he felt the realm pressing gently against his thoughts, as though taking the measure of him with each breath. As he walked, the walls on either side grew taller, narrowing like the throat of a great instrument carved from luminous stone. Light vibrated faintly across their surfaces, forming delicate ripples that followed his footsteps. It was a corridor of resonance, alive, aware, without warning. The path widened into a chamber so vast it felt like stepping into an open sky. The ceiling arched impossibly high, formed of overlapping sigils of light. The air carried no melody, yet every particle seemed tuned to something just out of reach, a note that hovered at the edge of hearing, waiting for the right spark to set it trembling. At the center of the chamber stood a solitary figure, tall, statuesque, carved as though from liquid silver that had hardened into elegant form. Their robe fluttered as though in a breeze. Arlen couldn't feel. Their face held sharp symmetry, neither gentle nor severe, an expression of refined neutrality. "I am Lythra," the figure said, their voice ringing with a clarity that resonated through the chamber. "Guardian of the Third Court, the Court of Silent Truths." Arlen bowed his head with quiet respect. "What does this court reveal?" Lythra gestured toward the space around them. The air shimmered. The sigils in the ceiling rotated like slow-turning constellations. "That," Lythra replied, "is not for me to reveal. It is for you to uncover." Arlen felt a soft tug at the edges of his thoughts, a sense that the room itself expected something of him, some offering, some willingness, some first step. Lythra lifted a hand. "This court does not show visions. It does not echo memories. It does not guide. It listens." Arlen frowned slightly, and sure he understood. Lythra continued. "The first court shows awakening. The second court shows connection. But the third court shows what you hide from yourself. Not through imagery, not through memory." Their eyes glinted with ancient patience. Through silence, the chamber dimmed. A gentle pulse moved across the crystal floor, and the air thickened not with dread, but with weight, as though the very atmosphere had density. Lythra stepped back. "Speak nothing. Move only if the truth compels you. In this court, your heart is the lantern, and the silence is the mirror." With that, Lythra dissolved into silvery dust. Arlen stood alone. At first, the silence felt ordinary, deep, expansive, but familiar. He had known quiet places his whole life. Forests before dawn, lantern shrines at dusk, the gentle calm after festivals. Silence was an old friend. But then the chamber shifted, not in sight or sound, those stayed still, but in sensation. The silence pressed. It wasn't oppressive. It wasn't harsh. It simply grew heavier, like a cloak layered onto his shoulders. Every thought felt amplified, echoing as if the room absorbed and reflected it back, not as sound, but as weight. Arlen closed his eyes and breathed. Immediately, the silence changed again. It tightened lightly, subtly around emotions he couldn't yet name. It brushed against hesitations he thought he'd buried under calm discipline. It touched the seams of old uncertainties he'd learned to carry without complaint. His breath faltered for a moment. The chamber grew stiller. Something within him stirred. He tried to speak, to ask the court what it expected, but he remembered Lythra's warning. No words, only truth. He steadied his thoughts, and the silence responded. It thinned around clarity, thickened around confusion, sharpened around fear, softened around purpose. It moved like water around rock. It reacted. It shaped itself around whatever stirred inside him. Arlen exhaled slowly, and then the silence plunged deeper. It reached into the memory of the silver figure on the plateau, the one who spoke in that veiled, layered voice. He felt again the presence, familiar, inevitable, and resolved. A presence tied to him by threads he still couldn't understand. The silence responded to that thought with a ripple sharp enough to draw his breath in. The vast chamber pulsed faintly. Light quivered in the sigils above. Arlen sensed it then. The third court wanted truth not spoken, not explained, but accepted. Not with mind, but with heart. He closed his eyes again and let the silence press closer. He remembered the silverleaf forest, the lantern shrine, his grandmother's teachings, the gentle steadiness of tradition, the pull he'd always felt but never understood. How all his life he'd walked as if listening for something others couldn't hear. And beneath all that, hidden under layers of discipline and quiet patience, was a truth he hadn't faced. He wasn't merely following a path. He was being drawn into one. The silence hummed softly in acknowledgement. Another memory rose, this one recent. The shifting lights of the first court, the threads of the second, and the figure on the plateau speaking of paths converging and realms leaning toward a turning point. Arlen felt a knot tighten in his chest, not fear, but the pressure of meaning he didn't yet have words for. The silence pressed harder. He couldn't hide, not from the truth that had taken root inside him long before he stepped into the courts. He wasn't here by coincidence, and whatever awaited him was far larger than anything he had imagined. The chamber reacted. Instantly, the sigils flared with sudden brilliance, cascading light downward in sweeping arcs like falling stars. The floor beneath him rippled. A column of silver light erupted from the center of the room, spiraling upward like an ascending river. Arlen opened his eyes. The silence had changed its shape. It no longer pressed. It resonated. It vibrated around him like a chord struck on a celestial instrument. Lithra's voice emerged from the light, not loud, not forceful, but in perfect harmony with the chamber. You have faced the truth you carry. Arlen looked toward the rising column. I didn't speak it. The third court requires no words, Lithra replied. Only recognition. The light dimmed slightly, forming patterns in the air, interlocking arcs, each shimmering with delicate glow. The patterns rotated, forming a single symbol, a crescent encircling a spiral of silver threads. Arlen stepped closer. What does it mean? It means, Lithra said, appearing again beside the column, that your path is bound not only to the courts, but to one who has walked their halls before you. Arlen's pulse quickened. The figure I saw. Lithra inclined their head. Yes. Who are they to me? Arlen asked. Why do the courts reveal them? Lithra considered him, expression unreadable. Because your choices will shape theirs, and theirs will shape yours. Arlen swallowed. Are they a guide? Not yet. A threat? Lithra's eyes glimmered sharply. No, but the realm's balance shifts toward a point where roles can change faster than understanding. Arlen felt the weight of the answer ripple through him. He stepped toward the glowing symbol again. Its presence filled him with an odd mixture of warmth and ache, like a melody just starting to form, but not yet fully realized. Lithra's voice softened. The third court shows not only what you hide, but what you are connected to. And the symbol you see is a mark of convergence. Arlen touched the symbol gently. The moment his fingers brushed the light, the chamber erupted, not violently, beautifully. Light cascaded from the ceiling. The sigils rotated faster, each shedding silver sparks that drifted like snow. The floor glowed from beneath, threads of brilliance weaving outward in intricate constellations that stretched to the edges of the vast space. Arlen stood in the center as the symbol expanded, forming a halo of light around him. When the glow finally softened, Lithra stepped forward with new solemnity. You carry resonance with the one you saw. The courts do not reveal such TIs without purpose. Arlen steadied his breath. What happens now? Lithra extended an arm. A new path unfurled, this one darker, denser, formed of deep silver rather than bright. The fourth court awaits. The court of shifting reflections. Arlen's pulse thrummed. What will it show me? Lithra's expression shifted, softening, but tinged with warning. It reveals the ways others see you, and the ways you see yourself. It is the court. Few walk unshaken. Arlen exhaled slowly. He stepped toward the darker path, feeling its pull immediately, quiet, steady, inevitable. Lithra's final words followed him as he walked. Prepare yourself, Arlen Frostweaver. What the fourth court reflects cannot be unseen, and the realm leans ever closer to what awaits. The chamber faded behind him, the path darkened, and the shadows of the fourth court rose ahead, waiting, listening, ready to unveil the next turn of his fate. The path toward the fourth court carried a deeper tone than the corridors before it. The light was not bright nor dim, but weighted with the quiet gravity that pressed against the edges of Arlen's awareness. Each step he took shifted the glow beneath his feet, swirling like ink drifting through clear water. The air settled thick around him, dense with expectation. He knew even before he crossed the threshold that this court would not meet him gently. The path opened into a towering hall, shaped like an immense, elongated prism of twilight light. Its walls were mirrors, not polished glass, but shifting surfaces that shimmered like water disturbed by invisible hands. Reflections flickered across them, but nothing remained still long enough to be understood. It felt as though the hall watched him through 1,000 glimmering eyes, each waiting for him to breathe the wrong way. A figure awaited him near the center sharp line, tall and cloaked in fabric that changed shades with every breath of the room. Their eyes were deep violet, reflective as still pools. "I am Velith," the figure said, their voice smooth yet edged. "Guardian of the fourth court." The court of shifting reflections. Arlen hesitated, then bowed his head. "Tell me what this court reveals." Velith's lips curved, not quite a smile, more like a blade brushed softly across silk. "This court reveals perspective. Not what is, but what appears. How others see you, how you see them, and how those reflections shape the threads between you." Arlen's spine straightened. "Must I speak in this court, or remain silent?" "In this court," Velith replied, stepping closer until their reflection multiplied behind them like 1,000 shadows. "Your voice matters less than your focus. The reflections speak first. You answer only if compelled." Arlen exhaled slowly. "And what must I do?" "Look," Velith whispered. "Simply look." The chamber darkened, the mirrored walls brightened, and the first reflection appeared. Not his own. A young woman stood in one of the mirrors, someone Arlen recognized instantly. Lyra Hollowglin, one of the few in Brindhar who'd ever truly understood his quietness. She had always carried a steadiness that felt grounding, and he'd often wondered if she sensed the way he drifted through the world, as if waiting for something unseen to call his name. In the reflection, she stood in the silverleaf forest, lantern in hand, speaking softly to someone unseen. "He listens more than he speaks," she murmured, her voice echoing through the hall like a distant breeze. "But that doesn't mean he is unsure. He simply waits for the right moment to choose." Arlen swallowed. He remembered the night she spoke those words, though he had only heard them from afar, not meant to listen. He'd always wondered what they meant. Another reflection flickered alive beside the first. His mentor, Elder Tyrion, stood before a small gathering in the lantern shrine. Arlen saw himself in the background of the memory, carefully arranging silverleaf offerings. Tyrion spoke thoughtfully. "The boy has always held the world with open hands. Not grasping, not resisting, simply bearing witness. Some would call that passivity. I call it strength waiting to be summoned." Arlen felt warmth coil in his chest. He had never known Tyrion had thought of him that way. He had always assumed the elder wished for him to be bolder, more outspoken, but the court didn't let the warmth linger. The mirrors shifted, swirled, darkened. A new reflection materialized, this one sharper, harsher. Group of young apprentices stood in the clearing behind the silverleaf grove, whispering. Arlen remembered the memory, though he had pretended not to hear at the time. One of them snickered. "He walks like he's listening to spirits no one else can hear, as if the world whispers just to him." "Strange," another muttered. "A little too distant, a little too quiet." Arlen's throat tightened. He'd carried their whispers longer than he cared to admit, letting them nestle into hidden corners of his doubt. The court pressed that weight against him now, holding it up as if to say, "This, too, is part of how the world sees you." Velith's voice drifted from behind him. "The fourth court mirrors truth through perception. None of these views stand alone. They carve the shape others think you wear." Arlen drew a steadying breath. "Why show me this?" "Because perception shapes possibility," Velith murmured. "And your path is laced with possibilities." that hinge on how you understand yourself and how others understand you. The mirror shifted again. This time, it wasn't memory. It was something new. He saw himself older by perhaps a year, face sharper, eyes carrying a weight they didn't yet hold. He stood on the edge of a vast silver plain, beneath swirling clouds. The same sigil from the second court glowing faintly across the sky. An unfamiliar group of figures surrounded him, all watching him with an expression he could not name, part awe, part expectation, part caution. Arlen's reflection in this vision lifted a hand that glowed with silver resonance, and the plane trembled at his gesture. His breath caught. "This isn't memory," he whispered. "It is reflection," Velith replied. "How others may one day see you. A vision not of destiny, but possibility." Arlen stared, pulse quickening. "Is this what the courts want me to become?" Velith stepped beside him, gaze fixed on the shifting reflection. "The courts want nothing. They reveal paths. You choose which one your heart answers." As the reflection faded, another emerged. The silver figure. Arlen froze. The same figure that had appeared in the first and second courts, still cloaked in shifting light, still indistinct, and yet unmistakably familiar. Their forms stood across a shimmering divide, watching him through the mirror with a stillness that felt almost intimate. But this time, the reflection was different. The figure reached out not toward him, but toward something reflected behind him. Arlen turned sharply. In the reflection, his own silhouette stood only a breath away from that mysterious presence, their hands nearly touching. But the moment the two silhouettes neared one another, the mirror fractured with a soundless tremor. Silver cracks spiderwebbed across the surface. Arlen stepped closer, tension rippling through him. Velith's voice softened, almost reverent. "Your reflection with this presence is unstable. The court rarely reacts with such volatility." Arlen touched the edge of the fractured reflection. The air pulsed sharply in response, as if warning him. "What does it mean?" he asked quietly. Velith walked slowly around him, violet eyes glowing like lanterns. "It means your connection to this figure runs deeper than the courts can easily translate into form. The reflection cannot decide if this presence stands with you or opposite you." Arlen felt the words settle inside him like a stone dropped into a deep pool, sending ripples he couldn't trace. The mirror shattered completely. Silver shards dissolved into drifting mist. Arlen exhaled shakily. "Is the court saying they're a danger to me?" Velith shook their head. "The court never speaks in such narrow terms. It shows contrast and convergence. What you saw was the reflection, struggling to decide which you share with this presence." Arlen frowned. "How can I decide without knowing who they are?" "You decided something in the third court," Velith replied, "whether you realized or not. Your truth is already moving toward theirs." Arlen didn't answer. The hall darkened again. Another mirror brightened. This time, it showed himself, his present self, standing alone in the silverleaf forest at dusk. Lanterns glowed through the branches. A soft breeze stirred the leaves. His reflection looked older than he felt, eyes carrying a quiet weight. This version of him lifted his head slowly. Arlen felt a chill ripple down his spine, because his reflection wasn't looking at the world. It was looking directly at him, not past him, not through him. As if recognizing the watcher on the other side, Arlen took an involuntary step forward. The reflection matched it. He stopped breathing for a moment. Velith's voice echoed softly through the hall. "The fourth court shows how you see yourself, and what you hide even from your own eyes." Arlen stared as his reflection spoke. "You walk as though waiting for permission," the reflection whispered, "as though your steps rely on the world's approval. But your path won't open for hesitation. It opens when you claim it." Arlen's heart hammered in his chest. The reflection continued, voice steady. "You carry a gift that listens to the realm, but you cannot listen forever. At some point, you must speak." Arlen's breath trembled. The reflection stepped closer until it nearly pressed against the surface. Gaze fierce with the resolve Arlen hadn't yet owned. "You fear becoming more than you understand. Yet the realm shifts toward you. It does not hesitate. Neither should you." The mirror pulsed once, twice, then dissolved into swirling silver light that wrapped gently around him for a moment, warm, steady, grounding before sinking into the floor. Silence swept the hall. Velith approached him. Steps light, but carrying the weight of meaning. "The court has shown you how you are perceived," they said softly. "How you might become, and how you see yourself. All of these truths shape the road you walk." Arlen lifted his gaze. "What am I meant to do with these reflections?" Velith's expression softened just slightly. "Understand them, not bow to them, not fear them, just understand. Only then can you walk forward without shadowing your own steps." The chamber brightened gradually. The mirrored walls faded into silver gray stone. The shifting surfaces settled into stillness. The gravity in the air eased, leaving behind a quiet clarity that hummed faintly in Arlen's chest. Velith extended an arm. A new path unfolded, this one luminous white, almost blinding at its edges. Within moments of stepping beyond the spiral arch of moonlit stone, Arlen felt the world tilt, as though an unseen hand had rippled the very air. The court of Silver Dawn, usually a sanctuary of calm radiance, shimmered with a tension so sharp it hummed against his thoughts. Every tower that once glowed with placid luminance now flickered as if unsure of its own light. And at the center of it all, beneath the dome of polished argent glass, stood the figure whose presence had drawn him back through the veil, Lysandra. She looked the same and utterly changed in one breath. Her posture remained elegant, her gaze steady, yet her aura, once soft and fluid as a river under sunrise, had deepened into something more knowing, more resolute, threaded with a strange new resonance that felt older than the courts themselves. Before he could speak, the silver pathways trembled beneath his feet, as though the entire realm leaned closer to listen. "You felt it too," she said, her voice low, but edged with a quiet spark. "The ripple, it was not a question." Arlen nodded. "The story you gave me, the one your mother told you, there is more to it. Something it carried without understanding." Lysandra stepped toward the center of the chamber, where a faint spiral of luminous mist circled an ancient pedestal. The mist rose like a memory trying to find shape. "I learned what lies behind it." The air brightened, as if stirred by a silent wind. The silver courts weren't forged merely as sanctuaries of harmony. They were born from a promise, a vow woven into the heart of Elvarin before even the first voices learned to speak. The courts were meant to balance the echoes of creation itself, reflections of possibilities, futures, and choices. But one strand has gone missing. And that strand, she said, looking directly into him, was bound to the line you carry. Arlen felt the words settle inside him like a gate clicking open. He sensed it before he understood it, an inheritance he had never asked for, tugging gently at the edges of his awareness. "Why now?" he asked. "Why reveal this now?" "Because the courts can't sustain their harmony without the missing strand. And that strand is awakening." Her fingers brushed the spiral mist. It flared softly, revealing the faint outline of a sigil, ancient, intricate, and unmistakably linked to the mark on Arlen's forearm that had appeared the moment he first touched the Dawnstone years ago. The sigil pulsed in unison with his heartbeat. He inhaled sharply as a memory not his own drifted across his mind, an elven figure standing at the threshold of a great arch of silver vines, whispering a vow into a quiet wind that carried entire worlds within its breath. Lysandra watched him closely, her expression softening despite the urgency around them. The courts have begun shifting. Pathways once solid now flicker. Chambers rearrange themselves. Echoes cross into halls that were sealed long before either of us existed. And these shifts all follow one pattern, one that matches your sigil. His thoughts spun. "You think I can reinforce the missing strand?" "No," she said gently. "I think you are the missing strand." The chamber brightened, the silver dome above humming with quiet resonance. It felt as though the realm itself paused to observe him. Arlen steadied his breath. "And if the courts realign, what then?" "Then Elvarin will remember its original shape. The possibilities that fractured long ago may rejoin. The echoes will find clarity again." She hesitated, a brief flicker of conflict crossing her features. "But clarity can bring questions we've avoided, truths we've allowed to blur." The glow from the pedestal intensified, and the spiral mist rose higher, weaving itself into faint symbols that circled them both. Images formed of bridges between courts glowing with lunar light, of ancient gatherings where elven figures stood united around luminous crystal arcs, of a rift of nothingness that appeared like a silent hollow tearing the reflection of a star in two. Erlen felt drawn to the images, as though his thoughts tugged them from the mist. "Show me," he said. "Let me see what you've learned." Lysandra stepped aside just enough for him to place his hand over the pedestal. The moment his palm touched the cool surface, the sigil on his arm ignited with gentle brilliance. The world around him dissolved into silver luminescence that carried him into a sweeping motion, weightless yet grounded. He found himself standing on the threshold of origins, a place spoken of only in myth. Here, the skies were deep and shimmering, threaded with strands of silver light, stretching across the horizon like pathways woven into infinity. Before him rose three colossal arches, each sculpted from pure luminous crystal. They pulsed faintly, as though their light slumbered. As he watched them, a figure stepped forward from the space between the arches. Not a person, not quite. More like a reflection given form, a serene echo shaped from moonlight and memory. Its voice drifted into him rather than reaching his ears. "You carry the seed of the vow-bound." Erlen felt the weight of recognition settle over him. What vow? A promise shaped in the First Age to safeguard the harmony of choices, yet unmade. To ensure that every future born of Elvarin remained balanced between wonder and wisdom. The figure approached, its outline shifting like a reflection upon a lake stirred by a breeze. The courts were created as anchors, but one anchor was lost when the first rift appeared. Erlen felt the image of the hollow he had glimpsed earlier return, clearer now. A kind of emptiness that didn't consume but divided. "The rift formed because the vowbound fell silent," the echo said. "Their lineage faded into quiet passages of time, and the courts lost their guide." Erlen stared at his glowing arm. "But the sigil returned." "Yes. You awakened it when your spirit aligned with the Dawnstone. And when you did, the courts began to stir once more." The echo extended its hand. From the space between the arches, a shimmering thread rose thin as a strand of hair, bright as a star on the cusp of rising. "This is the missing strand, the lay of continuance. It is bound to your essence. But to restore it, you must weave it through the three courts of silver dawn, gloaming, and zenith. And if I fail, the courts will drift further apart. Harmony will blur. Elvarin will lose its clarity." Erlen absorbed the words, the weight of them settling with quiet certainty. After a moment, he spoke with steady resolve. "Then I'll weave it." The strand drifted into his hand, light as silk and warm as memory. The scene rippled, dissolving in slow spirals, until the world of the Court of Silver Dawn reformed around him. Lysandra was still there, watching him with unwavering focus, though her eyes widened at the sight of the shimmering strand in his grasp. "You saw it," she whispered. "You reached the threshold." He nodded, feeling the strand's faint warmth coiled within his palm. "I know what I need to do." "Good," she said, though emotion flickered in her expression, relief, pride, and something more complicated woven beneath. "Because the Court of Silver Gloaming has already begun shifting faster than we expected. If we don't reach it soon, its pathways may fold into themselves." The chamber trembled lightly, as if agreeing. Erlen stepped closer to her. "Then let's not waste time." They moved through the archway that led deeper into the Court of Dawn. As they walked, silver pathways unfolded before them, adjusting gently as though guiding their path. Soft echoes drifted through the halls, memories of long-forgotten ceremonies, ancient promises whispered by unseen voices, harmonious chords that seemed to flow from the walls themselves. And yet, beneath that gentle beauty, he felt the growing instability, like a delicate instrument slowly slipping out of tune. Lysandra noticed too. "The strand is responding," she said. "It's aligning already." The sigil on his arm pulsed in rhythm with the shimmering thread he held. They reached the central transit hall, where three spiral gateways stood dormant but waiting. The one leading to the Court of Silver Gloaming flickered with soft twilight hues. Lysandra touched the edge of the spiral. It flared subtly. "Once we cross, the paths may not remain the same behind us," she cautioned. "Forward is our only certainty." Erlen nodded. "Then forward it is." As they stepped into the spiral of shifting twilight, the air around them twisted gently, folding into a corridor of drifting light. The last thing he saw before the spiral carried them away was the court of Silver Dawn, pulsing faintly as though offering quiet encouragement. The path ahead shimmered, mysterious and uncertain, and Erlen felt the strand within his hand glow brighter. He didn't know what awaited in the court of gloaming, but he sensed one truth clearly: the journey had only begun.